The story starts in the years after the incident known as the Great Hunt. The Great Hunt was when human vigilantes were trying to get rid of occults, but the occults had to go underground for their survival. Before this incident, a young man living in Mount Komorebi at the time, called Daken Mitsuhide, left his home country as he had this vision that something terrible was about to happen. He settled in the States in Willow Creek and had a family with a lady named Maria. This was his first wife, and from her, he had a daughter called Lynn. Daken moved to Oasis Springs as the family began to grow, and he fell in love with another lady. This lady was called Yasmin, and from her, he had Jinx, Rio, Violencia, and Akihiro. In their teen years, Daken told his children about their supernatural heritage and that their abilities might begin to show. Their abilities didn't show until a few years later, but as they did, it began to warp Violencia's mind as she couldn't accept them. The effects of Violencia's abilities warping her mind started to cause her to become erratic, and she requested that her father and their siblings takes her abilities away if the need should arise. Unfortunately, the need did arise, and Daken asked as a last will for this to be carried out. Jinx was the one who removed Violencia's powers, and Vio thanked Jinx for taking her abilities away. Akihiro also relinquished his abilities, as he said he couldn't see how he would use them, and he was afraid that his mind would disappear just like his sister's was almost about to. With this, Jinx and Rio and Lynn, for that reason too, understood this, and they were thankful for their honesty. And however, they still remained very close. Akihiro and Violencia lived out full lives with their family. They are no longer here. Jinx, Rio, and Lynn went on to have families of their own, and Lynn Mitsuhide unknowingly was raising the firstborn of the Date pack. While Daken Mitsuhide was living, and when he escaped Mount Komorebi, the Date pack also escaped Mount Komorebi. Masamune and his wife Aiko left their firstborn daughter Mei with a trustworthy businessman, as their Water Witch friends said this was the only way that the supers could actually survive. This is Mei, their first daughter. Upon finding Mei, Masamune thanked Lynn Mitsuhide for taking care of his daughter and remarked that it was the first time that two superhuman families could meet for the first time and not come to blows. Very historic moment. After this, him and Aiko said that they'd finally fulfilled their vow to each other not to have more cubs until they found their first one. And with this, the Date pack now begins to expand. The Mitsuhide families are also starting to expand, as there's basically a baby boom. Not kidding, there was. The two families intertwine and they set the foundation for a very long and long-lasting friendship. The newborn supers and their parents as well start to try and navigate this new world they find them in. It's not the same as the world they left, but it's not all that different either. The question here was, where do they all fit in? The Date and Mitsuhide families lived mostly in Oasis Springs, as it was easier to commute, get to school and stuff like that. They often visited each other quite a lot. They were basically bosom buddies all around. The kids of the Date pack were in high school, and the Mitsuhides, they were also their children were heading to college. At this same time, Chika, Suzuki, and Masamune got married and had their set of children. Lily Vator and Caleb Vator introduced themselves to the Mitsuhides. Jinx is turned because she offered her neck to Caleb, who was worried about this, but Jinx said, "I'm a witch, I'm living this long anyway." Lily marries Rio and Jinx marries Caleb. From Jinx and Caleb's marriage, they have triplets, one of whom goes on to have her own children who are quite powerful. We'll talk about them later. The Date pack's teenagers are also heading out to college, and this is a turning point in life for them because this is the part of the world where they really get to experience what it's truly like to be a supernatural. At the same time, this is when they start to learn more about their supernatural heritage, what they can do, what they can't do, their limitations, the state of, politics regarding supers, I guess you could say. It's also at this time that Lily's son, Daikun Mitsuhide Jr., as homage to Ryo's father, he also has to swap his dampiric powers as his body was not able to sustain them. Lily hadn't found out the reason why this wasn't possible, but it was probably because he was the first Dampire in their bloodline. The second half of this arc follows Jasmine Vator, Daikun Mitsuhide Jr., and Sakura Date as they go through university. During this time, Sakura and Daikun are expecting their first child, and so is Jasmine. However, Jasmine wanted to wait until after university to sort out her relationship with the father, as she said it was easier to think, much less on her plate. Except for the obvious first few months of pregnancy being a hassle, university goes very smoothly and Sakura's kid arrives literally after graduation, literally days after. Great timing, right? It's also around this time that the Chika's youngsters have also grown up and are having kids of their own. So here come the grandchildren. Daikun, Sakura, and Jasmine also keep in touch with each other after their university period, and unknowingly, they also set the stage for the next arc. The Hidden Secrets arc focuses on Hina and Ryu Date, Kiyoshi Ito, a son from a rich family in Mount Komorebi, Alyssa Lykenstone, a lone wolf from a pack in Moonwood Mill, but she's moved on from them since, and Sean Collette, the son of Jasmine Vator and Thomas Collette. You'll see later why this was a very controversial pairing. Anyway, these youngsters go through college and, experience life, ups and downs, lefts and rights, over and under, the usual stuff. They stick together in relatively close bunches. However, they had the misfortune of being paired with Ryu's old classmate, Urvi Anand. Urvi was a pain in school, but Ryu didn't see to it much. However, it turned out that Urvi was actually quite prejudiced against the supers, not to mention that she was also quite a crook. She was bribing everybody under the sun, she was hitting on people who were already taken, she was trying to sow seeds of discourse between the friends. She was a nightmare. So Sean decided to get rid of her by making a very huge statement at a romance festival, proposing to Hina Date. That hurt because Urvi had a crush on Sean. Eventually, the friends kick her out of the house because of her misconduct, and it would because of the fact that she was actually expelled from university. With her gone, they could finally focus on their courses. However, this was not the only thing that the youngsters would be doing at this time. One early morning, Kiyoshi was awakened from what he thought was a nightmare, but he had actually caused a blizzard outside. This prompted Sean Collette to seek more information about what Kyo actually was, because he had an inkling that Kyo wasn't actually human. Turns out Kyo is actually the descendant of an obscure supernatural race called the Awoken. They're obscure because they truly went underground after the Great Hunt. They survived, but nobody knows how many of them because they're kept to themselves. Around this time, Lin Mitsuhide's husband also notes to his wife that his body has now exceeded its limits and thus it will soon maybe be time for him to hit the sand. Lin, of course, is deeply saddened by this because he was very close to her after her first marriage turned out to be, let's just say, very, very hard to manage. Jay Huntington relinquishes his abilities, causing his body to dissipate. And afterwards, Lin has this vision of a plant. She seeks counsel from her sister and her husband Caleb, who has some experience in this field. And Lin basically has to head out to another dimension to get the real answers behind what Jay actually was. All this time, she thought Jay was somebody who had prodigal talent, and he'd never discovered it until he got together with Lin. Turns out that Jay is actually not of this world, and he was actually teleported here by mistake after looking after a plant of his. The plant thanked Lin for taking care of its carer, and eventually wilted as it was no longer for this world. Remember when I said Sean Collette's parentage was a problem for the caster community? It's because the casters don't like to fraternize with other than casters. Yes, they are very, very, very snobby. This behavior really riled up a certain mercenary who had taken an interest in a case in Mount Komorebi. This mercenary turns out to be Sean Collette's cousin, Mikhail Huntington, Lin Mitsuhide's grandson. Mikhail had been living in the Hollow for a number of years and had made a name for himself in the mercenary world. Yes, supernaturals have that too. His attention was drawn to the fact that there were reports of a couple who were scamming people in Mount K. Could be nothing, could be something. However, he wanted to see this exceptional caster cousin for himself, as he heard all kinds of crap about him. Rumor had it that Sean has different colored eyes because of his abilities. Thus, Mikhail wanted to confirm the rumors for himself. He was also not sure if said couple had a hand in some affairs that were affecting Sean's family. This is because at this time, Sean, Kiyo, and Hina are all living together. Kiyoshi Ito's mother also is very reliant on soothsayers. Mikhail had picked up chatter that there was this couple offering these very precise readings in fortune telling and stuff like that. Megumi Ito went to these readings as if they were life and death. She wanted this perfect family image and she was willing to do literally anything to get it. Unbeknownst to her, these readers were just two disgruntled warlocks who couldn't hack it in the village they lived, and because of their lack of willingness to improve, they were expelled. Upon their expulsion, they took a fairy with them and used her magic for their rituals. Mikhail meets this fairy, whose name is Minako, but realizes that Minako's soul is not there. Her soul is bound up elsewhere. Hearing this, Minako flies into a rage, breaks the contract that Megumi Ito has with the warlock, and then tells Mikhail all about their dirty dealings. Minako's soul, it's found out, is actually bound to the two of them, so that they can use her as a conduit in their foul rituals. Their rituals were working, however, they were using the rituals to make people's lives go bad instead of good. So Mikhail made sure that Minako had a personal stake in getting rid of this couple. With the couple finally vanquished, Minako's soul and abilities finally came back to her in full force. Mikhail said that she was now free to use her abilities as she herself saw fit. Her first order of business: destroy the scammer's hut. Overnight, Minako's wings covered her in this very strange cocoon, and in morning time, they opened up to reveal not a butterfly, but a brand new fairy who finally had her soul back, and a very nice outfit. She thanked Mikhail for all his help and for basically taking care of her. Well, 24/7, kind of, because they kept in touch a lot. Mikhail went over to Sean's house to break the news and to talk to Hina. However, unfortunately, during all these events, Tomax Collette, Sean's father, passed away sadly. It was in the month after Tomax's passing that Sean is on Morgan Ember's radar. Sean has a lot of untapped magical potential, and Morgan is in charge of looking out for people who are, well, exceptional, because casters are really not that exceptional. Morgan has been recruited by some mysterious benefactor and her daughter to recruit these exceptional people. However, Mikhail did not take nicely to his cousin being on somebody's recruitment radar and decided to pay this Ember a visit. After picking his brain, literally, Morgan spills that he has been tasked to recruit these exceptional supers. This brings us now to Ravenwood. Mikhail decided to find out who Morgan Ember was actually working for, and it turned out that he had been blackmailed into working for Maria Irwin, who was the head of an intelligence agency. Maria had a daughter by the name of Lorelei Petrovna, whose father fell foul of superhumans almost all those years ago. However, Laurie felt that her mother wasn't telling the full story behind her father's incident, as the mothers called it, and the two had an argument regarding that. Due to this, Lorelai got rid of the disguise her mother had crafted and unlocked her abilities with a simple ritual. She then headed to San Myshuno and sought the services of a tracker whom she lived next door to find all these superhumans that her mother was rounding up. Mikhail was able to evade Minho's prompts for over 2 months, but then Mick got sloppy and let his guard down one night. Easy pickings for Lorelai, who picked up on his scent and immediately found where he was. After discussing her plans with him and the werewolf who was there at the time, all paths seemed to be leading to Ravenwood, so there they went. A witch wanted to help them gain a tarot deck, which held untold power. It is later revealed that this untold power is actually containing the ability set that was used by the Goths long before. They used to have a big stake in the occult world. But not only is it holding that, it's also holding Lorelai's rightful power. Maria Irwin also tries to manipulate Ramona Goth into getting that tarot deck and using it for herself. It's also found that Olive Spectre has a stake in this for herself, as she is a Morrigan, but she's not able to cast spells on her own. She always has to absorb magic from something before being able to cast it. She hates this, and she's basically laying waste to the town in secret. So the top priority was to remove Olive from the playing board. Gathering what information and support they can, the group prepared to do a ritual called the Rite of Unsealing. The goal was to open up the tarot deck so that Lorelai and Ramona could get their respective power, and to rid Olive Spectre from Ravenwood. Maria Irwin hated the idea because she didn't want the truth behind Anton's demise to be revealed, but Lorelai ignored her and went ahead with it anyway. The ritual was performed in a marble room with candles and lighting, the usual settings, and it was thankfully a success. However, there was a small side result that not everybody seems to be aware of. Everybody who was present at the ritual and the one person who was connected to them, they all unlocked something of their abilities. There was no telling how intense or how unique those abilities were, and some of the group are still finding out what they've got.